It's too cold for us. We're going to freeze, cried Muecke, but Lucrezia shoved them into the frost hell. It was far too cold for any human. An icy storm lashed the landscape, yet in the distance a massive wolf stood and now trotted closer, greeting Lucrezia with a growl. The wolf lowered itself to the ground, and Muecke and his colleague climbed up its shaggy mane, which gave off a surprising warmth. Lucrezia seated herself on the beast's neck, and off they went through an apocalyptic terrain, until ahead, the two mountains came into view that Muecke would have recognized, had he owned snow goggles. The wolf halted so abruptly that the two of them were tossed over its mighty head into the depths, where astonishingly powerful arms caught them. Ahead was an opening in a monolith of unimaginable size. Could it have been built by humans? The material gleamed with a deep blackness. The path downwards was likely the entrance for giants. It was fairly warm. Warmer than they expected, yet still just barely above freezing. Light emanated from the walls themselves. Their footsteps echoed fearfully. At a turn in the corridor, you could sense on the left titanic structures of bygone giants. On the right, the path continued through a kind of mist downwards until reaching a building that appeared to be inhabited. A light burned inside. Materiors sat there on a chair that faintly resembled a throne, and at his feet lay a monstrous creature that looked like a fantasy being, a kind of winged serpent, now lifting its head with a hiss. "Hello, Lucrezia," the giant man nodded to the newcomer, who dragged the two humans like rabbits by their collars behind her. Carelessly, she flung them before Materior, who hovered above Midgard and regarded the two humans. "May I introduce myself?" said the professor, the first of the two to be captured. "Muecke, Professor Muecke, specializing in archaeology and, if I may be so bold, ufology." He rose, brushed the snow from his suit, and attempted to make a dignified impression. It was strange. The man before him was entirely different from the aggressive woman who had brought them here. He looked like, well, an idol of the Nazis. His skin shimmered reddish, his face aristocratic, yet of terrifying brutality. His voice thundered like a storm, but what of that? Muecke was the first proper professor who had the opportunity to face an extraterrestrial. And Marie-Sophie had now recovered and assumed posture. "I am Professor Mueller, one of the leading experts in astrophysics. I assume, unlike my somewhat archaic colleague, that I am dealing with a real alien here." Lucrezia gave her an icy glance, which she ignored. The giant man advanced slowly towards her and looked at her with the coldest eyes she had ever seen. He lowered his massive head very close to her. She tried not to show fear. "My goodness," he said suddenly, "you are wrong. I am a son of this earth, which is far older than you all believe. Before all time there was a time, and before that, another time. It would confuse you. But I was known in Lemuria, I was known in Atlantis, and I was known in your prehistory, when gods were worshipped. I earned the honorary title, Satan or Devil." "Whatever you prefer, dear Mr. Devil," said Mueller with increasing caution. "What do you intend for us?" "I imagine you possess tremendous power. What could we bring you?" "I need information, and I believe your little brains have stored enough of it. We are not here without reason. Moria becomes active when the dark formless overwhelms, and we sense enough souls that belong to us. We will sort the creatures of this planet. Some will be taken by us to Moria, the others will be sacrificed." At that moment, a chilling sound echoed from the depths of the vast edifice. It was less a sound than a vibration that set every cell to trembling. "We are not alone here," said Lucrezia. "If I may say something," said Professor Muecke, "on the way here I saw Mount Erebus and Mount Terror. One believes in some circles that one is standing on the remains of a terrible culture. There are peoples on Earth whom I overheard performing pagan dances around strange sculptures. The god they invoked lives in the depths, in the sea, or right here, in an underground lake, in a facility from a time, as you say, eons ago. A forgotten god. If he awakens, he will devour the earth." "Cthulhu," murmured Materior. "Before Moria, Another race lived on this planet until from the deepest depths of the universe a monster reached Earth. It had no form, it had no name. It became the ruler of this world. With it, everything was to begin and everything to end. Its dreadfulness surpassed all, for it was the root of all evil. A race from outer space, far beyond our galaxy, the Grutons, were highly advanced. They sought the Ctulluh, as the first humans called it. Because it was dark energy, one could not pin it down into one form. Back then, the Grutons built this fortress, which made it possible, through systematically built pyramids, to lay an energy network around the Earth that prevented Cthulhu's escape. This network became ever more intricate until Cthulhu was finally imprisoned in a chamber of this fortress. Here, in the depths of this mountain, the Grutons lived, and their Cthulhu is still supposed to slumber. The alien smiled disdainfully. One of your race's legends, born from the viewpoint of dwarves. But for us, it is of no significance, Lucrezia added. Where we come from, every energy is bound. No one, not even Cthulhu, can enter without becoming one of us. All this was, of course, very interesting to the professor, and he did not even resist as Lucrezia led him and his colleague through truly terrifying corridors to a kind of prison. There was at least something like a bed for each, and a carafe of water stood ready for both prisoners. Food will be brought to you by our human servants. Do not be surprised. They are those whose evil reputation you so readily invoke to silence any opponent. We have them for real, the true Nazis, not any followers or sympathizers. The ones who were fearsome and fearless have been rescued by us. They will guard you and keep you alive. As long as you cooperate, you stay alive. And what shall this cooperation look like? Asked Muecke, interested. You are our bait, answered the tall woman. And I think Materiors still has questions for you. As do I, by the way. I have many questions. Which ones concern what? Asked the professor and brushed a lock of hair from her face. I believe you know quite a lot about this planet and the organization of power. What personally interests me, I will tell you. But do not indulge in false hope. I can read your minds, even against your resistance. And what prevents you from doing so right now? Asked Muecke. Materior, murmured the odd beauty and turned to leave. You cannot switch the light here on or off. It just is. A peculiarity of these buildings. You will not freeze either. The temperature will adjust to your bodies. These Grutons were quite pampered in the end. The woman left the roughly 20 square meter rectangular room and locked the door energetically. Instantly, it became bright and warm. The light was pleasant, as if tuned to human eyes, and the temperature too. They looked around and saw that there was a sleeping place and seating made of stone, but which molded to the body when one sat. Thank you, my dear unknown Grutons, murmured the professor. At that moment, he heard a voice in his head that was familiar to him. You are still under the protection of my people. Be hopeful. Are you? Asked Sophie, who too had heard the voice. She thought of the spirit, which had seemed to die in her presence. We are ultimately one, murmured the voice. But it is true. I was it. Ask no more. All will be explained. Certainly, answered the professor. What shall we do with them? Asked Lucrezia. We wait until their friends come, replied Materior. And so it happened. If one descended deeper into the labyrinth of gigantic corridors and halls, past houses hewn by giants from monoliths, often for kilometers between dark, abandoned buildings, which must have been inhabited by beings that were horrifying and utterly unearthly, one eventually arrived at a corridor that led down to a dungeon, which was light and soundless. Surrounded by kilometers thick granite and hidden layers of a radiation-shielding fabric, invented by this long-extinct race, in an inaccessible cavern stood a sculpture which depicted a demon bound in chains, from which an almost invisible field emanated, forming the tiny opening through which Mbano could observe the prison of Cthulhu. Mbano's body may have lain sleeping on his home planet many light years distant, yet here he was alive, although he felt that his life force was ebbing. The Grutons, who had originated from the Andromeda Nebula, had already surpassed the zenith of their power millions of years ago. Like all advanced races, they had transformed their material structure into spiritual force, which meanwhile also waned the more Grutons ascended into that unknown eon in which eternity reigned. Mbano was forgotten. He felt that abandonment increasingly. As he now sensed the presence of Materior and his companions, at first relief overtook him, but then with what remained of his mental power, he recognized the malevolence of the newcomers. Demonness sank from above into the depths and awakened Cthulhu, who had birthed such dark powers from himself. He gained shape again. At first, it was only the eyes that became visible. But by now, Mbano perceived the shadowy presence of the monstrous being from a hell that knew only destruction. Where Cthulhu originated, entire galaxies had been depopulated. He was like a dark nebula in which all life was lost. He sensed that Mbano was growing weaker, and he sensed that there were forces nearby that would doubtless possess the madness to free him. He scented their trail behind him and registered the darkness behind the black hole, where the evil of these worlds held itself for an invincible devil. He knew no laughter, but if he had known it, he would have laughed. Moria was only one of the lesser monsters he once had produced. He was about to manifest a body. For that, he needed dark energy, hate energy, which the strangers from Moria could supply him.